In 1968, before he became the world-famous singer-songwriter, James Taylor was just a 20-year-old kid. He had finished recording his first album, the self-titled James Taylor album, with Apple Records in London, the same record label that made the Beatles famous. And on it, there were songs like Something in the Way She Moves, and an early version of Carolina in My Mind that a lot of people know, but it's a sped up version, it's more produced. It's not what I would say is the quintessential version that people know and love today. Sometime after he finished recording the album, he was out to drinks with a friend when the friend said, "I have some bad news to share with you that we've been keeping for some months," which is that one of their other mutual friends, a woman by the name of Suzanne Schnurr, had committed suicide some months before. They waited to tell him because they were afraid that he was on the cusp of fame. He was completing a project that could launch his whole career, and they didn't want to do something that could cause him to spiral, and so they waited to tell him, and they were really worried about the way he would respond. And even though he was just a kid at that age, only 20 years old, James Taylor at that point in his life had already been through a fair amount of tragedy, and he knew how to cope with it, with his music and with his guitar. And so he absorbed the shock of that news, and he took it, and he went and he wrote the lyrics. "Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to." That would later become one of his masterpieces and one of the great pieces of American music in the 20th century, Fire and Rain. I've heard the song countless times, but when I listened to it this week, after hearing James Taylor tell the story in his own words, it hit me differently. Perhaps I heard something different in the solemnity of his voice, or the beauty of his guitar was pulling on my heartstrings, but I found myself overcome with emotion listening to this song this week, almost on the verge of tears, hearing about the way he came to grips with the death of an old friend who has now forever been immortalized through his music. The song was first released in 1970. It's 53 years later, and we are still invoking Suzanne's memory every time we find ourselves humming the tune or tapping our foot along with it on the radio. In Fire and Rain, James Taylor does what countless musicians, painters, and writers have done throughout history, taking the memory of someone and extending it long beyond their years on earth. And that is what we do too. We extend the memory of a person whenever we remember someone dear to us who has passed. We may not be using a paintbrush or a guitar, but when we memorialize someone dear to us, we not only remember them, we also do whatever we can to keep their memories alive long after they are gone. On Shavuot, we celebrate the giving of the Torah. In the fourth commandment, we read it twice in two different places, once in the book of Exodus and once in the book of Deuteronomy. And when we read the fourth commandment about Shabbat, we read it in two different ways. Once we are told Zachor at Yom HaShabbat, and the other we are told Shamor at Yom HaShabbat. Once we remember the day of Shabbat, and once we keep the day of Shabbat. If we imagine that the Ten Commandments are the most important part of the entire Torah, a moment that stands above everything else, then how can it be that we have a discrepancy in the text? Remembering and keeping something are similar, but they're not exactly the same. And so the question emerges, how do we have these two things, and how do we do both of those? The answer has been immortalized by Rav Shlomo Halevi, the 16th century rabbi and mystic, who wrote the song we sing every Friday night during Kabbalat Shabbat, L'chadodi. In the first verse we say, Shamor vezachor b'dibur achad. We simultaneously remember and we keep. And as Jews, that's not just the way we observe Shabbat. That is also exactly how we memorialize our loved ones. We are not merely remembering them, not just Zachor, we also keep their memories alive. Shamor. We do both at the same time. Shamor v'zachor, remember and keep. Of course, we always remember the ones we loved when they're no longer here. We remember the sound of their voices. We remember the way they smelled. We remember the music they listened to, and we still find ourselves smirking at their jokes when we think back on them. But what does it mean to do more than just to remember them? How do we move from the passive act of remembering to actively keeping their memories alive? Those are the things we find ourselves doing all the time, whether we are conscious of it or not. We keep them as a part of our lives long after they are gone. We do not merely remember the phrases that were a part of who they were. We repeat those phrases at every meal we share with friends and family. We wear their old necklaces or their brooches close to our hearts. We step into their shoes literally and figuratively. We wear their old raincoats and their suits, even if they don't quite fit us right. We make the same recipes that we grew up eating, and we feed our children with them. We name our sons and daughters after them in hopes that our little ones, will grow into all of the best qualities of those who came before them. Our thoughts turn to them as we light our yahrzeit candles. We do the things that give us a sense of connection to the generations who have passed because we never want those memories to disappear. We hold on to them like precious jewels, no matter how long they've been gone. Although our parents, our siblings, our spouses, our children, our grandchildren may be grandparents may be gone, we feel their presence in our lives every day. We wonder what advice they would offer us when we need it most. And we have conversations with them, hearing their voices in our heads and imagining what they would tell us. Even without them here, they are still influencing our decisions. We feel the weight of their shoulders every day, of their hands on our shoulders every day, guiding everything we do. It is in those moments when we miss them the most that we try to bring their memories back into the world. We remember them and we keep their memories alive. Zachor veshamor. And as much as we keep their memories alive, the memories of them too keep us going. James Taylor said about the process of addressing his grief by writing Fire and Rain, "I would carry that song for the next year with me, and that song would carry me for the rest of my life." Of course, the song catapulted him to a level of fame he could not have possibly imagined when he was just 20 years old. But it also carried him in ways that transcend fame. It ensured that the memory of his friend would never fade. It kept her memory alive and kept him going too. The memories of those who have passed on from this world are sustained by us every day. And in that way, while they are no longer physically here, we can't sit with them at the dinner table. We can't call them for advice. They can't rub our hands as they ask about our day. We feel their spirits with us all the time. We keep the memories of the ones we loved alive because in reality, we are not only keeping them alive, the memories of those who have passed keep us too. We do not only remember them, but we use their memories to sustain us through the hardships of our lives. Those memories carry us. Those memories carry us. When we recite the Yizkor service, we'll take a few minutes to privately remember the names and the faces of the people who have shaped our lives, and those whose lives we in turn shaped while they were here with us. During that private prayer, we pledge to give tzedakah in their names. We don't merely memorialize them through private prayer. We seek to spread their ideals that made them who they were. We tell their stories and we share their wisdom. We make sure their influence continues to be felt in the world, no matter if they've been gone a day, a month, a year, or a decade. In that way, the memories of those we've lost carry through the generations. On Shavuot, we hearken back to the giving of the Torah and the central image of all Jews throughout history, standing together at Sinai as the 10 Commandments are given. It is not just Moses' generation that passes through the wilderness, but every generation that follows. We know that the lessons we have learned from our loved ones, the stories we've heard hundreds of times, the expressions we can recite by heart, and the values that continue to guide us do not die with them, but they live on through us. We will pass them on to our children just as they passed them to us from one generation to the next, just as we did at Sinai. We do not merely remember, we also keep the memories as if they were still alive. And so we pray, El Malei Rachamim, compassionate God of our ancestors, may the memories of those who are no longer with us always endure as a blessing. May we remember them not only at the end of their lives, but also in their primes. May we remember all the ways in which we loved them and they loved us back. May we not only sustain the memories of our loved ones, but may the memories of our loved ones always sustain us. We do not only remember them, we keep their memories alive in everything we do.